Yeah, welcome to the latest edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Reiter. And Bill, a lot going on here. I just want to shout out, I know you're super excited about this. For the first time in 13 seasons, the Philadelphia Phillies are the NL East champions. Did you even sleep last night?
I'll tell you what, on the radio show, somebody called in and asked, can the Phillies win the World Series? And my really insightful answer was, don't care, man. No, only because of my bitterness as a Cubs fan. I'm just like, congratulate. How's your optimism level? You feeling good about what's in front of you?
Relative to other Philadelphia sports, like I tend to be pretty positive about the Phillies because they've been good for a second now, and even the last year was a little disappointing. Yeah, positive in a Philadelphia sense. Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Congratulations.
not bad, not bad. This is the other thing I wanted to run past you before we start the show. Um, Basketball is happening again as we record this. The Boston Celtics are doing their media day. Bill, what happened? It's basketball season already.
Dude, you know what? We shouldn't complain because we get to talk about hoops for a
It's
living, and it's
amazing.
amazing.
Mhm.
But the Olympic years are rough because, usually there's a down,
Over.
right? You're down, and then you have some sort of, yeah. My wife, I mentioned that to her, and she got mad. Like, I scheduled the NBA season. like, I'll talk to Adam
It's
Silver.
here. It's upon
It's
us.
here.
Training
It
camps are
is.
starting, media days are starting. And so it got us thinking this is what we're going to do for today's show about the stakes for this season, because, this season's going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different teams, players, coaches. So for this show, the theme is who has the most on the line. And that could be interpreted in all sorts of different ways. It's a little bit of a Rorschach test. We're going to interpret it how we want to individually, but we're going to do probably five each of who has the most on the line. We'll just talk through it. So you kick us off. Who has the most on the line
All
to
right.
start for you?
I'll be curious where you come down on this because it's going to sound counterintuitive because he just won an NBA championship and he just won an Olympic gold medal. But I've got Jayson Tatum on here. Wasn't the finals MVP, obviously bothered him. Didn't have the role that he coveted, perhaps, this summer. Obviously bothered him. And corny's wrong, but he doesn't seem to get the accolades that maybe the best player and the best team in the NBA deserves. Was sort of a fringe MVP candidate, but nobody really thought he was going to be the MVP last year. There's 5 names that go on that ballot, and it varies depending on the year how many guys actually have a real chance. He wasn't one of those guys, even though he was 5th on a lot of people's ballots, not on mine. So for me, it's like I think he's going to feel like there's a lot on the line to prove what he's about. And I'll even say, I know people roll their eyes. He was great. He got double teamed all the time. We don't have to rehash this. But it's not as if he took over a whole bunch of games and it was on his back that the Celtics single-handedly won an NBA championship. It's a different way that they're built, and there are some questions that remain. I think they're probably unfair about what he's about in sort of end the game. So John, for me, I think on a personal accolades level, on a personal recognition level, on a personal superstardom go to the next level, I think Jayson Tatum is an interesting season coming up.
Man, isn't that fascinating? Like, you think about Jayson Tatum is coming off of getting the richest contract in NBA history.
Yeah.
He's an NBA champion. He was also almost NBA Finals MVP. Could have been, wasn't. Goes to the Olympics, doesn't play, but still wins the Olympic gold medal. Was first team all NBA. And
Right.
we're like, Jayson Tatum's got a lot to prove. And it's right. It's right.
I think he feels it too, doesn't he? I think he thinks he does.
It's just wild. I mean, he's 27 years old. There's a story. Ramona Shelburne has a story out today about how, you were just talking about, like the summer was truncated and the Celtics didn't really get to revel in it for a lot of different reasons. And one of the things was, the Olympics and what happened with the drama there and Jaylen Brown not getting selected, but also what happened with Jayson Tatum. And in the story, Jayson Tatum is talking about, hey, or maybe it was his trainer, Drew Hanlon, who was talking about it. But he's like, hey, he's 27 years old. Michael Jordan didn't have a championship at 27 years old. But we're still pulling on these threads with him.
Yeah.
And there's a lot there. And really, I had the Celtics on my list, writ large.
Okay.
You really look at them and go, there hasn't been a repeat champion since what? The Warriors? Right? First time around. So 2018. Yeah. So the Celtics, now they've got the questions around Tatum. They've got Jaylen Brown, who wasn't happy this offseason. They've got questions around Kristaps Porzingis' health. And then also his contract. He's only got 2 years left before they have to figure out whether to extend him. Joe Mazzulla doesn't. I mean, he has to eat with his back to the wall. Who knows how many times he's watching the town? Things happening in Boston.
Do you think so? I'm going to ask you a question. You think? Let me combine your Celtics and my Tatum with this question.
Yeah.
Is it reasonable to be worried, to be alert to whether or not Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum as a duo have a little bit of competitive tension that can get in the way, given the fact that Brown didn't get to go to the Olympics, but he got the Finals MVP, and Tatum didn't get the Finals MVP, and felt like maybe he should have? Or do you think that's am I conjuring issues out of nowhere?
I hope that you're conjuring the issues and speaking it into reality for the Celtics component. No, I think that's fair. Supposedly, when the whole Olympic thing went down and Jaylen Brown was not happy about getting left off the team and Derek White getting added, supposedly he texted Derek White and was like, "Hey man, this isn't personal. This is a me and Nike and Adidas situation along with Grant Hill." But there is that speculation right now. I do think that they've been, for so many years, the Jays have been at least from the media perspective, compared to each other, set against each other. Maybe they use that competitiveness as friendly, fraternal competition where they're motivated by the other one's ability. But, you won a championship and not everybody can share equally in the accolades, right? So it's reasonable to ask.
By the way, shout out to friendly fraternal comp. I don't usually like alliteration, but that is a nice little turn of phrase right there.
Thank you. I didn't do it on purpose. It just kind of stumbled out of my face hole. That's a great one. That's a great one. All right, I'm going to give you one. I'm going to stay in the Eastern Conference. I'm also going to go single player, and not to be too predictable here, but I'm going to be predictable here. It's Joel Embiid. He just signed an extension. 3 years for $191 million with a player option on the back end. This is something that's just for cap nerds. If Sam was on, he'd like this part, but I'm going to throw it at you. Because of the new media money. Because of the new media money bill, he will count as a lower percentage against the cap when he's making $69 million on the back end than then he'll count against the cap this season when he's making 51. It's wild.
Yeah, that's just how much money is going to rush into the deal. Yeah,
I love this. The new money is just through the roof. But anyway, he's going to make a lot more money. I want to read this to you. He put this on Instagram after he signed the deal. Philadelphia is my home. I want to be there the rest of my career. I love this community and everything you've given to me. There's a lot more work to do. You guys deserve a championship. And I think we're just getting started. Bill, he's been in the NBA for 10 seasons. They haven't gotten out of the second round. What does he mean they're just getting started? This thing has to be on the road by now.
And he complained 2 years ago when he didn't get the MVP, and and it worked, by the way. We weren't working together then, but I remember saying a lot on HQ and radio, Joel Embiid is basically shaming voters in advance for the font where he got the MVP, and then injured and came back and played really well. And it was a really good series against the Knicks. But it's put up or shut up time in terms of playoff accomplishments. And just like with my Tatum and you and Celtics, on my list, I have Daryl Morey and just the Sixers in general, because your guy that runs operations, for your team, right? He waited in the wings. He took a huge swing. He had a ton of cap space. Obviously, he got Paul George in part because of the Clippers. I think incompetence is fair, but mismanagement, if we're going to be a little kinder. And so, but you're right. I mean, Embiid he's the fulcrum here. He is the key ingredient of a few where I'm not even a Sixers fan. I'm starting to get sad and pissed off on your behalf. They've got to start conference finals, or that's not far enough. I don't think.
I think we're just getting started, dude. You're killing me right now.
Restarted. For the fourth time.
Restarted. So that's the reason why I didn't go with the Sixers and Daryl Morey on the whole, because I thought Daryl did a really good job this offseason rebuilding the team on the fly. It's the best team they've had around Joel Embiid, but it's really about Joel Embiid because, as I've mentioned to you multiple times, look, he's been an MVP. He's been an MVP runner-up. He was on track potentially to be an MVP again last season before he got hurt. He's led the scoring the last 3 seasons, even though last year he didn't qualify because of games played. He's never made it out of the second round, Bill. They have changed every single player on the team. They have changed the coach multiple times. They have changed the front office from Sam Hinkie to multiple Colangelos to a combination of Brett Brown and Elton Brand to now Daryl Morey. everything has changed in the last 10 years except for one guy. And that one
And the
guy
thing
is one of the best players in the NBA, and he hasn't gotten out of the second round. And what, like you were saying, getting to the conference finals sounds great on paper, probably not far enough.
And they have the right coach now. Nick Nurse is the right coach. I think they have the right guy in the front office. Again, sometimes when you're a gambler, it works or it doesn't. It has worked. He's got the right co-star in Paul George, the guy that you called for in the regular season last year if you could have somebody. He's got a rising star in Tyrese Maxey. They fill out the roster in a nice way. It's no excuse time. And by the way, and I know you know this, but it bears repeating, you don't get more healthy and less injury prone as you get older, especially as a big man. And so
that's true.
Congratulations on the extension. There's no guarantee that he's reliable for 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 4 months down the road. So sands are going through the hourglass quickly.
Yep.
And for me, it's why it's the Sixers too, because your window for Joel Embiid is not necessarily the window of the extension. It's the window of however long you can actually reliably believe he can play, 65 games, and then an entire postseason. And it's a question mark whether we're even there right now.
It's wild to think about if they made the conference finals going, it's probably not enough. And if they made the finals and lost, it's probably not enough.
For year one?
I don't know. It's not year one in my mind. It's year 10. And it's like you're running out of time for all the reasons that you just mentioned. And on top of that, he's not healthy a lot of the time. So I don't know. I mean, it's really championship or bust for this guy. And it's tough to do, especially because the Celtics are so good and the Knicks are incredibly deep. So yeah, a lot on the line for Joel Embiid. Give me another one.
Yeah, your Embiid one's good too, because he may end up being the best player of his generation not to win a championship if it doesn't happen very soon. By the way, I think I have a lot of confidence in Tatum. I have limited confidence in Embiid / the Sixers. I have very little confidence in this next one. I think this is one of the most on the line. It's Doc Rivers, and it's that Bucks organization. Okay, so you have a full training camp, which, as you noted, is beginning. You obviously had the time last year. You have the opportunity for Dame and Giannis, who have had ample time to sort of get used to each other, implement your ideas, pretend, Doc Rivers, that you're an amazing coach. Obviously, I don't come down on that particular side of the argument, but this is a huge season for the Bucks. But I just think for Doc Rivers, who has gone, like, the criticisms that I have about Doc have gone from being fairly fringe during his Clippers years to, I think, would you agree, fairly mainstream, or at least you're not on an island if you doubt Doc Rivers. Well, now you've got the team and the opportunity and the time that's come in to prove me wrong. I'd love you to prove me wrong. I love Giannis. I love Dame as players, as dudes. But it's a big season for Milwaukee, and I don't think you get excuses if it doesn't work out after this year.
Yeah, Bucks are on my list. We have a nice little overlap here. 18-20 with Doc. They lose in the first round. Yeah, they didn't have Giannis. If they lose in the first round of the Pacers, who had a really nice season last year, but that's not where you want to be if you're the Bucks, especially because you go out and get Dame, and you're like, oh, this is going to be a 2-man pairing that's just going to click. It's going to work. We're going to run pick and roll. Right. It's going to be amazing. And then yes, Giannis got hurt, but Dame didn't look like Dame. He's 34 years old. His points per game and his shooting all dipped last season. Now you're looking at Chris Middleton, and you're going, how much does he have left in the tank? I love.
He looks old.
Yeah, he's not getting any younger.
I mean, with Dame, I don't think.
I don't know. And they really have to figure out that 2-man game, because when you unplug Drew Holiday and you make your defense demonstrably worse, and you lose the guy who is your second best player on a championship team in order to, you think, supercharge the offense with Dame Lillard, that has to work. Because here's the other thing I put on here. Giannis has 2 more seasons on his contract and then a player option. And like, I know that a lot of people think like, hey, they went out and got Dame. They tried, right? So it's going to keep Giannis around. There's been all these rumblings. You're the insider. There's been all these rumblings about, hey, wouldn't Giannis maybe like to play with Luka one day or something like that?
Oh, no, there's plenty of people out there who think that Milwaukee's bet on Doc Rivers and Dame is a bet on Giannis's future. And in that vein, I think the East is harder this year than last year, because I think Philly is clearly better. And I know it's hard to be back-to-back champions, but obviously Boston weren't just champions last year. Like, on paper, some of the stats, they're one of the better champions we've seen going back to the Jordan years. And the Cleveland Cavaliers were able to retain Donovan Mitchell. We didn't really think that was going to happen. And Orlando feels like, if you sort of buy what you saw, a team that is on the rise a little bit. And the Knicks obviously went super mode in terms of the guys they added. So it's not only the question marks about Milwaukee. I think the level they have to get to is even higher than it was last year. To the same conversation about the Sixers. making the second round of the playoffs isn't a success. And I know that those guys were banged up and they didn't have Giannis in the playoffs and Dame for, I think, a big chunk of that series. But yeah, too bad now. Okay, that was last year, and you sort of had a little bit of a learning curve, and Doc wasn't great. His record with them wasn't great. I think it's also, there are 3 teams. There are 4 teams if you include the Knicks. There are 4 teams, I think, John, that expect to make the conference finals at least this year. And Milwaukee has to be one of them for the reasons you're talking about. You're right. Giannis 2 years on the road. This is really significant, not just for this year, but for the future of that franchise.
It's got to work. And I don't really like the way that it forecasts for them because the East is deeper. And eventually, maybe when I return from my little sabbatical, we'll do our Eastern Conference and Western Conference predictions for, how the standings will come out. But I told you, I'm high on the Magic. The Magic, their trajectory is picking up. And the Bucks are getting old and theirs is going down. And I probably have the Bucks 5th in the East. And that's tough when you're looking at Giannis and Dame. So the Bucks is a good one. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And then on the other side, we'll continue with a little bit of more, who has the most on the line this season. This is Beyond the Arc.
A Quiet Place Day 1 is now streaming on Paramount Plus. It's thrilling, terrifying. It will make your heart pound out of your chest. A Quiet Place Day 1, now streaming.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John Gonzalez and Bill Reiter. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, and leave a review. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can leave us a comment on this episode. Just look below the play button on the Spotify app when you're in full screen mode, and then you can tell us what you think about the show or leave us a question, and hopefully we'll respond to that on a future program. All right, we're continuing with who has the most on the line this season. I'll give you one here, Bill. This one I think is it's evergreen. It's all, 'twas ever thus with this guy. It's LeBron because he's LeBron. He's coming off of a season where he gets a new extension, 2 years for $101 million, keeping in mind, of course, that he took this much less. My fingers are barely apart for those of you who are not watching on YouTube and just listening. He took that much less to get to help the team with the new CBA and their cap situation. But it's got a no trade clause. It's got a player option on the back end. He also gets JJ Redick hired, his podcast co-host. He gets Bronny not just into the NBA, but to his own team. And he's going to be 40 this season. And they're playing in a loaded Western Conference. I mean, on paper, in theory, you've got 2 all NBA guys on that team between him and Anthony Davis. But I don't know if that makes them much more than a play-in team. And, he's not going to play forever. I think he could play till 45 or longer if he wants to. But eventually the end will come for him. And so he put this team, he orchestrated this situation more than he has in quite some time.
And he was the player of the tournament in the Olympics, right? So he sort of reminded us if we needed it. He still plays in his higher levels. And shorter sample size. Obviously, the Olympics wasn't an 82-game season in the playoffs, but he has it when he needs to sort of go to that place. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was talking to a guy who works. He's an Eastern Conference guy, but whatever. We were shooting the breeze. I think the Lakers can miss the playoffs. I mean, they're probably miss the play-in even. I'm not – because and we've talked about this a lot. There are so many teams on the rise, and JJ Redick is such a question mark of what he's going to be as a head coach. And I think we all presume LeBron's going to be really good. I'm with you. He wants to play at least 45, and as he declines and isn't a star, I think he still can be an impactful guy, even at the back end of that range, as a guy that plays 20 or 25 minutes a game if he's willing to sort of do that role, right? Like close out games, but not play a lot of minutes, maybe starts and closes, whatever the role is. But he does turn 40 in December, and we could be wrong. He could age really, really quickly. And they weren't very good last year. They do have 2 top 10 players, according to our, as you know, the top 100 list. I think that's about right. If JJ Redick's not very good at the job, if LeBron ages a little bit, and AD played, but if AD gets hurt a little bit, if there's even a small problem with Bronny on that team and getting minutes he shouldn't, or just a slot, there's just room for, I think, a lot to go wrong. And I'm with you, Tom, as it always is, LeBron to carry this thing and to put it on his back, on his aging yet still remarkably capable back. It's a lot to carry.
They could have, I mean, even if it's what it was last year, because I won't pick them to miss the playoffs or the play-in. I think that they'll be a play-in / playoff team, probably a play-in team again, but a winning record, a good team, a tough out, but a low ceiling. And if you're LeBron, that's kind of not good enough, right? I mean, it's you're the GOAT, and you were playing the puppet master.
It's not good enough.
You're the chess master. You moving all the pieces around the board. It's tough.
I don't think he cares. I think deep down he knows he's not playing. I don't think he is coveting championships anymore. I don't think that's his actual. If you got him alone, hanging out with his guys, right, having a drink, I think
he's already done enough in that space. You think in his mind?
Likes living in LA. Has an organization he has so much control over. He can handpick his coach. He can
going to be an NBA owner one day. Big time business guy. You know what? I take it back. I take him off the list. He's fine. He's got nothing on the line.
I could also see him deep in his brain, because he's a very smart guy and he's a long-term planner, thinking what you think, which is he can play to 45 and thinking, all right, I'll do the Lakers for a few more years. I'll play with Bronny. I'll get him situated. Then I'll leave these bums that I put in this position and I'll go play for whatever, Memphis, Minnesota, the Knicks, whoever it is, as the wise old man of 20 minutes a game, and I'll get my ring that way.
LeBron. Yeah, you changed my mind. Now all of a sudden I'm like, it's all good for him. It's everything's gravy. Hit me with another one.
All right, this one's a little emotional. Okay, most of these are head. This is a little heart. Okay. I love this guy, and you might push back that there's a lot on the line for him, but I think from his own pride perspective, there isn't. He's in a situation where if he can show that maybe he has a lot still to give, even in a different role, this team can be a championship contending winning team. I've got Klay Thompson on the list. I think leaving Golden State the way that he did, not making it as long as or longer than Draymond, being basically surplus to what they require, and going into a situation where he doesn't have to be the number 2 scorer. He doesn't have to be the number 2 guy like some nights, right? It's not Steph and then who's next. You've got Luka in Dallas. You've got Kyrie. They're going to command, obviously, a ton of attention. I know Klay's looked old. We have talked about, especially post-injury, he went from being one of the most underrated two-way players, I think, in the NBA. He was so good defensively to a guy that just isn't that on defense anymore. And obviously, he's had some amazing moments offensively, but he still had a pretty good season last year if you just look at the straight statistics, but it wasn't at the level that was expected. So I am hoping, and I think there's a lot to show that he can be a contributor. And I think he's in a situation where if he still can give at a level that for whatever reason didn't work out in Golden State, the difference maker is strong, but I think he can be a critical piece for a Dallas team that obviously made the finals and then got just dominated by a really good Celtics team. He's a nice addition if he can be any semblance of the old Klay, 80% of the old Klay Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, for a really down year at 34, where all of us were bagging on him, right? He shot 39% from 3 and I think 41% after the All-Star break. Yeah. It's every team in the NBA would take somebody who could do that. And then on top of that, if he could be even what you were saying, some percentage of the old Klay defensively, I know that he's lost a step, but if he can regain, a quarter of a step, a half a step, because he's a massive upgrade over Derrick Jones Jr. offensively, but defensively, Derrick Jones Jr. was obviously so much better. So, how much do you lose there? But that's a good one. I think I might have been too down on him when we did our top 100 because I had him outside the top 100. Did he fall
outside of the top 100
for me? I think he did for the composite list as well. But maybe we're too down on him. Maybe this is the Clay-assance, the renaissance for Klay.
Was that just make that up too?
I kind of mashed them together. So yeah.
You're on fire. Clay-assance? I'm using it on radio. I'll credit it.
I'm using it all right now for the show. The shows I'm already out of material for the other shows for the season. I'm gonna do one that's a individual as well and kind of tongue in cheek here, but let me see here. Klay was 99th in the composite.
That still feels like a slap. I'd rather not even be on. That's such a slap in the face.
He just barely made it. Yeah, it's kind of like an honorable mention.
I got him on there with my 70th or whatever.
Nicely done. 70. Here's one. Ashley would approve of this, or maybe not approve. She'd maybe disapprove of this. I'm going to go with Tibbs. This is a little tongue in cheek. Most on the line this season because he's got too many toys. And we know that that's going to mess with his head. I want to see what happens when Tibbs is looking down the bench going, oh, bleep, I have 4 other guys that should probably be getting heavy minutes, but I can't get them in there. Recently, so just to go through the starting 5, it would be Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and Julius Randle. And in theory, Mitchell Robinson, but he's got an ankle injury and he's going to miss time and he's not going to be with them to start the season. In Tibbs's heart of hearts, do you think he was I
Yes.
feel bad
Thank
for
God.
Mitchell Robinson, but really
No,
he's like celebrating because he doesn't have to play Mitchell Robinson now because he's still got Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo and Deuce McBride and Precious on the bench too.
Yes.
It's too many guys for him.
Do you know that GIF where it's some superhero looking dude? He's got 2 buttons and he's sweating, and one button you can make one button's like use my death, and the other is revert to form, and he doesn't know what.
Yeah,
because the mark. I know you're a little tongue in cheek, and I hope Ashley hears this because she's now going to get really offended by me. The mark of an extraordinary coach, like the highest level, is the ability to adjust beyond your general philosophy or your general approach to use the players you have. Right, personnel dictates the system in the best coaches of all time, rather than the system dictating which of the players you're going to use. And the personnel that has been put together by Leon Rose in the front office in New York is the deepest or second deepest, right, somewhere in that range, team in the NBA. I mean, they are real, especially when they're fully healthy. And how you manage those guys. Oh, and by the way, you got to keep Julius Randle happy, right? There's been some sort of talk about do they need him and how important he is. And they made that run. They had that remarkable season last year, largely without him. So you kind of manage minutes and egos, and then you've got that in the mix. And I think Tibbs is great at a lot of things. Realizing he's allowed to play more than 5 guys, 48 minutes each for the entirety of the game is not one of his strengths.
He's gonna want to play them all 40 minutes a game, and he's not going to be able to do it. And that's why I'm fascinated to see what happens with Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo, who really emerged last season as like critical pieces for that team when they were looking really good, and they had a ton of injuries, and they were forced into being like starters, and not just starters, but like critical pieces. And now all of a sudden they're back to the bench. And so like, how does Tibbs get them involved? Right. I mean, like in theory, especially because they are so deep, you would think, hey man, let's just scale this back. Let's not do your normal Tibbs thing where you're playing everybody 35 to 40 minutes. Let's play them all 30 minutes, like much closer to that, right? Like 28 to 32 range. We'll rotate it. We'll keep everybody fresh. Some nights off for these guys, some nights off for those healthy guys. Yep. And then we go into the playoffs, guns a-blazing, right? I have a hard time imagining that. And I know he does too. So I can't wait to see what happens with that.
Do you know how they have it doesn't really work in college football, but they'll have sort of a shared quarterback role, right? They'll have like co-quarterbacks. Is there a world where you could have someone else coach the Knicks in the regular season and Tibbs is the defensive coordinator, but once you get in the playoffs, that baby switches?
I love that. Yeah,
no, it doesn't work.
He's just in charge of clock management moving forward. Actually, no, that's the problem now that I think about it. All right, another quick break, and then we will continue with who has the most on the line. This is Beyond the Arc.
At CBS Sports Golazo Network, we're bringing you the game.
Madness of Messi arrives!
Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Whoa.
And all day long!
24/7.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. You can also find us on YouTube. Our page is at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. All right, so we're doing who has the most on the line. Who's next up for you, Bill?
This is a team I have zero confidence in. It cost me a bet I haven't paid off yet, so it's not like it really cost me anything.
Okay.
The Phoenix Suns, it's the same boat, right? They are tied into this team. They still claim, not even claim. I mean, I know people in that organization, and they will tell you, some of them with a straight face, some of them with the sort of resignation of I work for morons. You know, have you ever worked for idiots, where you just like you have a certain like, this is the word from on high. They still think they are still thinking at some levels that they are contenders, that is the goal. That's the thing that they're going to do with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal and whatever assembled pieces they can fit into their cap hell. So I have no confidence that they can rise to the challenge of having everything on the line, but they do. And they still think up to the ownership level that they can compete. And I think it's going to be another rude awakening.
The cap hell thing is really, really significant. I mean, just because I understand, trying it again with those 3 guys and hoping that everybody stays healthy, and who knows. But if they don't, or if it doesn't start working, like what's the remedy, right? Because you can't trade Bradley Beal. He's got a no trade clause, and you're not going to trade Booker. Yeah, it's Durant probably.
And Durant's going to be willing to do that. And I mean, I don't know. I'm presuming that maybe he would, because he wants to win. He loves to hoop, and He's competitive, but even then, so you've got Booker and you're stuck with Beal. So what are you getting back for Durant? And is it pieces that are immediate? If it goes really badly, they have to think about it.
The Houston rumors were interesting because they have so many different pieces, right? And if you're Houston and you're looking to level up this season, you could go, all right, yeah, I mean, like, let's take a couple of our guys that are younger, ship them off to Phoenix. Phoenix gets younger and cheaper, and then all of a sudden we've got Kevin Durant for maybe like a little bit of a push. But you know, what do you think that this, absent that, if they hold on to these three and they're just going to plow forward this season, what's the ceiling for them? Like, can they win the West? I don't think they can.
Oh, no.
So what are they doing?
I learned my lesson. I mean, their ceiling is maybe being – so let's say that like one of the teams that we think are going to be really good get sort of riddled with injuries, and it's not Phoenix. So we take one of those. You take out of Denver. You take out of Minnesota. I think Memphis is really interesting. Fourth, and then lose in the four and four.
I think for series. a home first round series, I think is pretty much their ceiling.
That maybe you lose.
And maybe you lose because the West is so tough. So you mentioned our bet that we had because you and I made a bet first round series with the Wolves, and the Suns. I got the other side of that for this most on the line. I've got the Wolves ownership because I think that, like, we kind of have forgotten a little bit about this during the offseason, but it's so messy and it's going to continue to be messy. The Wolves, I think, by anybody's reasonable accounting, exceeded expectations last year. Anthony Edwards really stepped forward. Ant-Man looked amazing, and Rudy Gobert was Defensive Player of the Year, and Cat came back from an injury, and they ended up beating the Denver Nuggets, and they looked really good. And I like them moving forward as a team, but they're extremely expensive. And you've got this ownership battle between Glenn Taylor and then on the other side, A-Rod and Mark Lore. And it's in litigation right now. It's in the courts. And Taylor was supposed to sell this team to them and then said that they violated the terms of the sale and reneged on the deal. Initially, Bill, this deal back, a couple of years ago was supposed to go for $1.5 billion. Well, not surprisingly, we mentioned the new TV money and all this stuff. Teams are just appreciating in value. Now the franchise is valued at somewhere around $3 billion. So Glenn Taylor went, wait a minute, that's more. So, now, and on top of that, Glenn Taylor, as we know, is notoriously, I'm going to say, cheap for a billionaire, but he never likes to pay the tax. They're going to pay it this season for sure. But whoever wins this battle is going to end up with an extremely expensive team that is deep into the second apron because you've got massive contracts for Anthony Edwards and Kat and Rudy, and then Jaden McDaniels and Nas. And it's like they, in the same way that the Suns don't have a lot of, it's a great team, but it's an expensive team. So after you pay for the team, then you have to pay for the team.
Can I attach onto your excellent ownership situation sort of just a connected dot, and that is Rudy Gobert? Because I was thinking about, I almost put him on my list with a lot to prove. Just the pressure and Draymond mocking him and the lack of meaningful minutes in the Olympics, and just the way in which he is widely celebrated by media members who vote for Defensive Player of the Year, but ridiculed often by players, and all what you're talking about. There's not a lot of margin for error for Minnesota. The guys they paid have to perform at a really higher level, and Rudy Gobert has to be in every series really important and impactful if they're going to take last year's surprise and make it a consistent thing that they're competitive in the West.
Yeah. Rudy was almost on my list for all those reasons that you mentioned. It's weird to, and I somehow consistently end up getting, put in the position of being the Rudy Gobert defender on this show, but
you are
4-time Defensive Player of the Year, and we're all like, I'm not sure about him. There's a lot of people who are maybe not sure about him. But
I'm not sure about him.
Yeah.
The Wolves are
the Wolves ownership thing. And producer Aaron points this out, that Glenn Taylor is 83 years old. I mean, take your billions, man. Take your billions, go live out your life, enjoy yourself.
We live near each other in LA. And so we both live near some very rich people. And I'm just going to take a shot at rich people, even though I love you. And we're all trying to be rich people. I'm not going to get there, whatever. Rich people love their money, man. It's crazy how cheap, frugal, weird some of the people that live in our community are, who I know have tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, and you can't get them to pay for their own beer. So I'm not surprised that Taylor's just – I think that some of these guys are hardwired this way. That's how they got their money.
Maybe he wants a better deal. Let's do maybe one more each. What do you think?
Do you want to do like a bonus one?
Yeah, let's do another one. One more.
So I've got one that I think – I'm not sure if this is legitimate or not, but I'm gonna do it. And that's
Okay.
Bronny James, because he doesn't get to be eased into the NBA. And for all the – we know this, right? He's drafted because of LeBron. He's a Laker because of LeBron. The kind of contract he has with the Lakers and therefore the opportunities is because of LeBron. And I don't know, but there's a lot of people who think that Bronny's going to get some minutes that maybe he shouldn't because LeBron got to pick the coach and JJ Redick. It's a lot of pressure. I spent a little time in the scrum, but watching him at not summer league, at the draft combine in Chicago in whatever it was, May. Impressive dude, man. Impressive young man, but that is not the same thing as playing in the NBA if you're not able or ready or should be there. And so I think it's unfair, but it is self-made too by his family. A lot of pressure on that guy.
It is unfair and yet also kind of simultaneously fair, though, right? Because I mean, his dad orchestrated the situation, as we mentioned at the top of the show, and got him not just into the NBA, but onto his team, which is one of the most celebrated organizations, not just in the NBA, but in sports in total. And there's going to be a ton of spotlight on him. And he could have, I mean, he has agency here. We keep saying that this was sort of thrust upon him, but if Bronny dug his heels in and said, no, I want to go back to college, or, this probably isn't right for me. I mean, but
LeBron, you're right. He has agency. And at the end of the day, life isn't fair, but it's a lot more fair for Bronny James than 99% of people on earth, right? I mean, the guy's got a great life, but I think he might be, to your point, underestimating the level of potential humiliation that other players want to and may be able to put on him if he's out there in any sort of meaningful, at any minutes at all.
I mean, he should be in the G League. How much time do you think that he'll spend in the G League relative to with the main club going back and forth?
I don't know. I mean, he should be in the G League a ton, and that, I think, should be the – like, this is what Sam Presti does, right? You have them in the G League all the time, but when they're not playing G League games, if there's a window, you're up with the in this case, the Lakers, whether that's practice or around. Don't you think LeBron's going to want his kid on the plane with him and the kid – I mean, if you're traveling to away games and you're on road trips, I mean – I think he's going to be up with the Lakers a lot more than he should be.
I missed this somehow, because the Olympics stopped and then, we all scattered to the wind. I missed this. Evidently, the Lakers fired their G League coach after
you're
Bronny
right.
in the summer league, which is just amazing.
Good luck.
Godspeed to Bronny. All right, one more for me and then one more for you, and we'll roll out of here. I had a whole bunch of different ones that I could have gone with for my last one. I'm going to go with Draymond for my last one, because Draymond last year, we saw what happened. He had two massive suspensions for two real knucklehead incidents. One where he puts Rudy Gobert in a chokehold, and the other one where he roundhouse slapped Yusuf Nurkic in some sort of like MMA move. And it ended up really hurting that team. They ended up being in the play-in when they could have been out of the play-in, because when Draymond came back, they played like a completely different team. He unlocks so much for them. On top of that, as you mentioned with Klay, they chose him over Klay. He's still there. Klay's playing in Dallas. This guy needs to get himself under control, because when he's not with a team, it really hurts them. He is now, your mileage may vary on Pajemski and Kuminga and whatever, but he's their second best guy. He's not a scorer. He's not a shooter, but he does everything else on the basketball court. And he's really good at all the other stuff and the intangible stuff, but there's been way too many incidents. And if he has another one this season, people are going to lose their minds. The NBA, who knows how long he could be suspended for. And the window on Steph is closing, and the ceiling for that team isn't that high. And they need every ounce that they can squeeze out of Draymond Green.
And he ruined Jordan Poole's career and derailed the season before with the punch in the face caught on camera. It is a great one. It's a great one too, because to your point, when we saw Draymond not being a knucklehead, there's a world where the Warriors are a lot better than we think. And we're only a few years removed from them winning a championship where Steph was the main guy, and then these other pieces. For my last one, I'm going to lean into knuckleheadism too. And this sort of goes beyond being a knucklehead to some serious accusations, but he's back from injury and from those. John Morant is, I
Great
think, I mean, for all the obvious reasons, that was a team and a player that were on the rise to be at the very top of the NBA. He is more than capable of being a top 10, a top 5 player in the league. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to stop the shenanigans, knucklehead, stupid mistakes, serious mistakes. And he's got to be able to lead a team that we sort of forget about. And the West is a lot harder than when he went away a year and a half ago. But he is, and I think they are capable, if he is able to live up to his talent, his expectations, and stay on the floor for all the reasons he hasn't, they could be really, really good this year. He's an amazing player.
He's an amazing player. You're right about, him having to show it again. Later this week on Thursday with Ashley, we're going to do our league pass draft. And I don't want to tell you where I'm targeting the Grizzlies, but they're going to be pretty high on my list because he's probably my favorite player to watch in the NBA. He reminds me, he's kind of like a miniaturized version of Embiid in that he plays the Mr. Kool-Aid man style, where he's just like bursting through a wall at all times and ending up on the floor at all times because he only has one speed, and that's full go. And it's like, he's diminutive. He's not a big guy. And
right.
I don't know how much longer that style physically will serve him well because, it opens him up to potential injury. But from a pure entertainment standpoint,
while it lasts,
man, is he fun to watch.
He's like Russell Westbrook. However long it lasts, it's going to be the first NBA game I ever took my son Henry to, was a Lakers playoff game against Memphis. And Henry's a Lakers fan because he lives in LA, but he came out of there just mesmerized by John Morant because he was by far the most dazzling player on the floor. And obviously LeBron played in that game. AD played in that game. He's incredible when he's out.
Appointment viewing. I can't wait to watch him again this season. I'm glad he's back. That's going to do it for this show. As I mentioned, later this week on Thursday, the first ever Beyond the Arc League Pass draft. We're very excited for that. Basically, which teams are we excited to watch this season? We'll talk through that. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Reiter, I am John Gonzalez. We thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you on Thursday.